I know people always say this, but I swear I'm not the type to make things up. I work from home, I feed my cat, I listen to the same 3 podcasts every week. Nothing strange ever happens to me, but 3 months ago I started hearing a sound I still can't explain. It wasn't loud, but sharp, clean, like a branch snapping but too perfect. Like someone had recorded the sound of something breaking and played it back in a quiet room. The first time I heard it, I was sitting on my couch around 10:30 at night, typing something into a spreadsheet. There was no music, no TV, just background hum from the fridge and some rain tapping the windows. Then the sound came from the hallway, a quick crack that made me stop typing mid-word. I waited for something to follow, a thud, maybe footsteps, but nothing did. I got up and checked around. No broken glass, no fallen books. I even opened the hallway closet in case something slipped off a shelf, but everything was where it should be. My cat didn't react, which made me feel like I was being jumpy. Maybe the building settled weird. Maybe a neighbor dropped something. Whatever it was, I let it go. 2 nights later, same time, 10:30, I heard it again. This time the sound came from the kitchen. Same crack, same exact tone. And this time my cat did react. She bolted off the back of the couch and vanished under the bed. I checked everything again. Nothing broken, windows locked. Apartment completely silent. It started happening more regularly after that. Never during the day, always at night. And always in a different part of the apartment. The sound never repeated, just once each time, like a warning shot. I mentioned it to a coworker during a Zoom call, half joking. They said maybe I had a mouse chewing wires or something like that. But there's nothing in the walls. I live on the 2nd floor and there's no attic, no basement. It wasn't coming from inside anything. It was always in the room with me, simply there for a split second. Then one night something changed. It was a Friday. I remember because I'd ordered Thai food and was waiting for the delivery. I heard the crack at exactly 10:27. I know this because that was the exact time I had just checked the tracking app. This time the sound came from directly behind me, but it didn't echo. It felt flat, like it had no space to bounce off of. I turned around so fast I knocked over my water bottle. Nothing was there, and then, just a few seconds later, I got a call. The contact read unknown, but the number had the same area code as mine. I answered it, and there was nothing but static and dead silence. I hung up and stared at the screen for a second. Then it buzzed in my hand. It was a text message from the same number. It said, "Do not open the door." No punctuation, no explanation, simply that. I stood up and looked through the peephole. No one was there, but about 30 seconds later someone knocked, 3 times, not fast, not urgent, but a knock, 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 each one exactly spaced apart. I didn't move. The text kept running through my head. I don't know how long I stood there, but I eventually went back to the couch and sat down. I sat there for a few minutes and curiosity finally got the best of me. I figured if I cracked the door and took a look, it wouldn't hurt anything. So I went and opened the door an inch or two, see if anyone was around. There was nothing there, so I closed it and locked the door again. And I gave a little chuckle thinking this had to be some kind of prank. Back at the couch, I just sat there, waiting. Then, and this is the part that still messes with me, I blinked. And I was at my desk, middle of the day. It was bright outside and I was wearing different clothes. My lunch was half eaten next to the keyboard. It was like I skipped ahead. At first I thought I'd fallen asleep, but my computer was on and I had emails open that I didn't remember responding to. The food was warm. My phone said it was Sunday. I'd lost almost 2 full days. I checked my phone history. No missed calls, no texts. Nothing from Friday night at all. I even checked the food delivery app and there was no record of any order. I sat there for a long time trying to make sense of it. I looked for logical answers, sleepwalking, stress, a weird dream, but the gaps didn't line up. My apartment was clean. My cat's litter box had been scooped. Food wrappers were in the trash that I didn't remember eating. And then I saw the note, folded neat, and set on my coffee table, like I'd put it there for myself. Plain white paper. It was clearly my handwriting, and it said, "Don't open the door, not this time." No signature, no date, just those 7 words. I don't write notes to myself. I use phone reminders like everyone else, and I definitely don't remember writing that. But the handwriting was undeniably mine. I still have the note. It's in a drawer. I don't look at it much. The sound came back once after that, a couple of weeks ago. Not as loud, almost like it was further away this time, like whatever had been close wasn't anymore. I haven't opened the door after dark since, not even once. I don't even know how to tell this without it sounding like I'm trying to scare someone, but this didn't feel scary when it happened. It just felt wrong, in the kind of way you don't notice until later when it hits you that something didn't line up. This started about 2 months ago. I live alone and I work from home, so my schedule is pretty uneventful. But I installed a security camera over my front door a while back, mostly to watch for package theft. It's not a fancy system, just a battery-powered Ring-style camera that pings my phone when someone walks up to the door. That day, I had just come back from picking up groceries, maybe around 3 p.m. I remember because I stopped at the gas station on the way back, and the receipt's still in my glove box. Anyways, I come inside, unload everything, and set my phone on the counter. I make some coffee and leave my phone there while I go to the bathroom. When I come back, I see I've got a notification. Motion detected at the front door. That's nothing new. I get alerts like that when the mailman walks by, or when the wind shakes the tree just right. So I tap it open, mostly out of habit. And what I see is me, standing at the front door. I'm not moving, just standing there, arms down at my sides, wearing the same gray hoodie I had on, facing the door like I'm about to knock but haven't yet. The video clip is only 8 seconds long. I stand there for all of it, then it cuts off. I looked at the front door right then, even though I already knew I wasn't outside. I was inside. I'd been inside for at least 10 minutes. I pulled up the video again. Same thing. I checked the timestamp, 3:07 p.m. That tracked. That was when I was in the kitchen making coffee. The footage wasn't glitchy or blurry or corrupted. It looked totally normal. Crisp lighting, natural shadows. Everything in focus, but me outside, where I hadn't been. At first, I thought maybe it was an old clip, some saved alert that got pushed through late. But it wasn't. It was listed right at the top of the app under most recent activity. And the footage had my hoodie, the one I had just put on that morning. I don't wear it often. It's got a bleach stain on the left cuff, which I could clearly see in the video. I watched the clip maybe 20 times. I zoomed in, tried to catch anything off. The stance, the posture, even the way I lean slightly to one side when I stand still. It was all mine. But that wasn't me. There's no mistaking it, but it couldn't have been me. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe a neighbor with a similar build, maybe a friend playing a prank. But no one I know has my exact clothes, or the stain on my sleeve, or my slouched shoulder from an old rotator cuff injury. That night I didn't sleep much, not because I was scared. I just kept trying to think it through logically, replaying it, trying to figure out where the mix-up was. The next morning I went outside and checked the camera mount. It was still solid, no signs of tampering. I even reset the device and checked for firmware updates. Nothing odd came up. A week went by and I stopped thinking about it. Then it happened again, different time. This time it was late, around 11:30 p.m. I was brushing my teeth when the phone buzzed in the bedroom. When I checked it, the alert was already a minute old. Same thing, me standing at the front door, but this time I'm facing the camera looking directly into it, expressionless with my hands in my pockets. I'm not even blinking. The footage is 7 seconds long. At the very end, I tilt my head a few degrees to the left, like I'm examining the lens. Then it cuts off. I ran to the window and looked outside. No one there. I opened the door and the porch and street were empty. This time I felt it in my gut, that slow rising realization that something is out of place in a way you can't explain. I saved both videos to my computer. I even showed them to my brother when he came by last weekend. He thought they were weird, but said maybe it was a bug in the app. Like maybe it duplicated footage or glitched and recorded from earlier. But that doesn't make sense. There's no other recording of me outside in either of those outfits. And I've never stood at the door like that, especially not staring into the camera. I don't think it's a glitch. A few days ago, while pulling weeds near the fence line, I found something balled up under the boxwood hedge, stuffed down in the dirt like it had been there for a while. It was my hoodie, the gray one with the bleach stain on the cuff, the one I'd been wearing inside my house, the one I'd pulled from the laundry basket just days before. Except when I went back inside to grab it, it wasn't in my closet or the hamper or anywhere. It was gone. The one outside was dirty, like it had been dragged through the mud. But it was mine. I checked the tag and yes, the corner I accidentally burned with a lighter years ago is still there. I haven't worn it since. It's hanging in the back of my closet now, zipped inside a dry cleaning bag like I'm trying to contain something. And I haven't watched the camera feed in over a week. I still get the alerts, I just don't open them. I'm not sure I want to see what else has been by. I don't usually work late and I never take the back roads if I can help it. But a thunderstorm knocked out half the city's power and the main highway was a parking lot. So after my closing shift at the bookstore, I figured I'd try the old country road behind the train yard. It's not like I've never been down it. I've lived that same part of town for over 10 years. Same apartment, same routines. The country road is just an empty stretch of cracked pavement and telephone poles. A boarded up diner, a sagging grain silo. That's it. So when I passed a full-blown hospital about 10 minutes in, I nearly hit the brakes. It wasn't some rundown clinic. This was modern, 5-story facility. Bright LED lights, digital sign out front, flashing ER wait times. Clearview Regional Medical, clean, crisp, like it had always been there. But it hadn't. There has never been a hospital on that road. I slowed down, confused. Maybe I'd somehow just missed it all these years. But I know that area. You don't just miss something like that. The next morning I drove past again in daylight. It was still there. Same building, same sign. The only thing different was how sure everyone else was about it. I asked a coworker if they'd ever noticed a hospital behind the train yard. He squinted and said, "Yeah, Clearview. That's been there for a while, hasn't it?" Another one said her aunt used to work there in the 90s. "You never noticed it before?" She laughed. That part rattled me, not because they knew it, but because they remembered it differently. Over the next few days, things started to feel off, mostly small stuff. My living room rug suddenly had a brown trim I swear used to be black. My neighbor's dog, Max, used to be a golden retriever. Now he's a lab. My phone background changed to a photo I don't remember taking. Me and my sister, same faces but standing in front of a mural I didn't recognize. And then came last night. I couldn't stop thinking about the hospital, about how out of place it felt. So I drove the same road again just to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. But this time it was gone. There was no hospital, no sign, no parking lot. Just the grain silo and a stretch of overgrown grass like nothing had ever been there. I pulled over and stared at the spot. My jaw dropped to the ground. There wasn't even a patch in the earth where construction might have happened. No disturbed dirt, no tire tracks. I went home thinking maybe it had moved or I was mixing up roads. But when I asked the same coworker today about Clearview, she frowned at me and said, "What hospital?" "The one past the grain silo," I said. She gave me a weird look. "There's nothing out there except for old farmland. You feeling okay?" Even my neighbor, the one who's lived here longer than me, swore up and down there's never been a hospital near the train yard. He acted like I'd made the whole thing up, which I didn't. I know what I saw. I remember the blue cross, the red letters, the smell of fresh asphalt as I passed it. But now it's gone, and everything else has started snapping back. My rug has the black trim. Max is back to being a golden retriever. And my phone screen is now the picture I remember it being. The one with my sister is gone and not even on my phone anymore. I keep thinking maybe I slid sideways into a different version of my life. Same framework, but something rewrote the fine print. I'm hesitant to take that road again. Wherever I ended up last time, I don't want to go back there. I used to make the same drive every month, Boise to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 6 hours give or take. It's not all that scenic, not unless you like dry plains and shuttered gas stations. But I liked the rhythm of it. I liked knowing the turns, the dips in the road, the way the light would change near Lewiston. I have taken that drive at least 24 times, always the same way, always stopping at the same travel plaza for gas and jerky. And there's this long stretch after Riggins that's just wilderness. Empty road and no cell service. Nothing but pine and crag. Except for one time there wasn't. This was back in 2018 and I was making the trip solo. I left late in the day and figured I'd make it as far as Grangeville before pulling over for the night. About an hour out from there, I realized I had to pee. Like, bad. Too much iced tea and not enough foresight. I wasn't expecting to see a town, but I did. There was a small green sign that said, "Welcome to Ellensburg, elevation 2,431 feet. That was odd right away. Ellensburg is a real town in Washington, but not in Idaho. But this wasn't that Ellensburg. It was barely a blip, just a short loop off the highway, not visible until you curved around the ridge. Still, I figured it was a good spot to stop. There was a gas station and what looked like an old supermarket. Looked like rain had passed through recently, puddles everywhere, mirroring the gold-pink light of the setting sun. Everything was washed in this weird, soft orange glow, like the kind you only see in vintage postcards. Not spooky, just perfect. The first thing I noticed were the cars, old Chevys with fins and white wall tires. Not museum pieces, they looked used, lived in. A few had sun visors or decals in the windows. One had a Garfield suction cup to the glass. I figured it was a car club thing. Towns like that do retro nights or 1950s weekends, so I didn't think much of it. I went to the market and there was wood paneling, a sign for Joe's Grocers and Meats. Prices were listed on pegboards. Nothing fancy, but it didn't look abandoned. There were 2 other people inside, a middle-aged guy thumbing through a newspaper near the register, and a woman holding a box of powdered donuts. The bathroom was in back, next to the freezer chest with cartoon penguins painted on the lid. When I came out, I took my time walking back to the car. Something about the town had this warm, dreamlike stillness to it. The sky was still glowing orange even though the sun should have dropped below the ridge. The clouds didn't move. The puddles on the concrete reflected everything like glass. And there was a little boy standing between his parents near the corner holding both their hands. The mom was pointing at something in the sky. They looked like they were posing for a Norman Rockwell painting. I saw a place across the lot called Real World Video. I hadn't seen a functioning rental shop in years, so I figured, why not? Inside, it was dim but clean. Rows of black shelves. Most of the tapes were VHS. There were a few DVDs on a rotating track. They had a new releases section, but the latest thing I saw was The Matrix Reloaded. There was a shelf marked games, and I wandered over. Nothing newer than PlayStation 1, and a few Nintendo 64 cartridges. Even a sealed copy of Goldenstein. I felt like I'd stepped back in time. But not like a movie set or museum. It all felt current, lived in. Like I just walked into 1999 and nobody told me. I left without buying anything, just wanted to get back on the road before dark. The sky still hadn't changed. It was orange and glowing. The town was quiet when I pulled away. I checked the map later that night in my hotel. There's no Ellensburg between Riggins and Grangeville. No exit loop or a side town even. I thought maybe it was an old township that had been renamed or dissolved, so I tried searching historical records and Idaho town registries. I couldn't find anything resembling that town. Every time I've made that trip since, I've looked for that exit, slowed down where I swore the turnoff had been. There's a straight stretch of road with a slight bend and a dead pine stump near the shoulder. I remember passing it just before I turned off. I always see that stump, but never the sign, never the loop, never the town. I asked someone in Grangeville once if they'd ever heard of Ellensburg. Got a squint and a shrug. "You mean the one in Washington?" they said. That was years ago now, but it hangs in my memory like it was only yesterday. I don't know if this counts as a glitch in the Matrix or just some fluke of timing, but I think about it every time I merge onto that stretch of highway, and it still makes no sense. This happened about 5 years ago. I live in Pennsylvania, but I was driving down to Maryland for a family thing. I'd made the trip a dozen times, usually took Route 83 to the Beltway, which anyone around here knows is a nightmare on a good day. Stop and go traffic, constant construction, and a level of tailgating that borders on sociopathic. That morning was rainy, not pouring, but steady, annoying rain. One of those days where your wipers never quite sync with the rhythm of the drops. I left early to give myself extra time, and I remember being in a weirdly good mood for once. I had coffee, a good podcast on, and I even thought to myself, this isn't so bad. The tires on my car weren't great, I knew that. I'd been putting it off. Something about tire tread depth and money and procrastination. And I kept telling myself they'd get me through one more season. Dumb, I know. Anyways, I was coming down the on-ramp to merge onto 695 near Towson, where the lanes snake around like they were drawn by a drunk with a crayon. I tapped the brakes as I rounded the curve, and that's when I felt it. This strange floaty sensation like I was suddenly on ice. The car didn't respond. I didn't turn and I didn't slow down. I just started spinning. I was moving in slow motion, fishtailing across multiple lanes. I remember thinking, this is it. I'm going to get hit from behind or the side, and there's no way I'm walking away from it. But nothing happened. There were no horns, no screeching tires. No impact. Just silence and the sound of my own breathing as the car finally came to a stop, facing the wrong direction in the leftmost lane. And here's where it gets weird. There were no cars, none. Not coming, not going. This is one of the busiest beltways on the East Coast, and it was completely empty. I turned my head in both directions and there was nothing. Just wet asphalt and an eerie hum under the silence. I didn't hesitate. I pulled a tight U-turn across the median strip. Not even a proper crossover, just one of those shallow grass dips, and rolled the car off to the shoulder. I swear to you, the second my tires hit the shoulder, cars were flying past me again. And I mean flying. Semis, commuters, SUVs. The noise was deafening all of a sudden. and I just sat there gripping the wheel, trying to process what had just happened. A couple minutes later, my cousin called. She was already at the restaurant and wondered if I was close. I told her I'd pulled over because of the rain, and I didn't mention the accident. I could barely explain it to myself, let alone someone else. It wasn't until later that the full weight of it hit. That ramp and merge zone is always packed. I've never, before or since, seen it completely empty. Not at that hour, not even during COVID. I looked it up later just to see if maybe there'd been a wreck or some kind of emergency closure that temporarily cleared the road. But there was nothing. No reports, no blips on the traffic sites. It was like the highway had paused just for me. I've told this story a few times to people I trust, and every single one of them chalks it up to crazy luck. Like maybe I just happened to hit that 30-second window where there weren't any cars. That's possible, I guess, but it didn't feel like luck. The world didn't just get lucky around me. It felt like it changed. I know how that sounds. I'm not someone who believes in alternate dimensions or whatever, but in that moment, sitting on the shoulder watching hundreds of cars wish by as if I had never been there, I felt like I had stepped out of sync with the rest of the world. Like I had dipped into some off-tempo version of reality, just long enough to avoid a collision that by every normal standard should have happened. Sometimes I wonder if I died on that road, if there's a version of me that didn't make it, and I'm just some leftover echo continuing along a path I wasn't meant to stay on. Or maybe the system just hiccuped for a second, a glitch, a reset, and I slipped through the gap. All I know is if a single car had been there when I spun out, even one, I wouldn't be here writing this, and that stretch of highway has never been empty since. I'll try to keep this short, but I think about this night constantly, and I still don't know how to explain it. It happened 2 years ago and I was with a friend, so I know I didn't imagine it. If anyone's experienced something similar, I'd love to hear about it, because what we went through still feels strange, like a memory that doesn't belong to the timeline I live in now. My best friend Jay works as a photographer, mostly for events. That night, he'd been hired to shoot a late wedding at a lakeside lodge about 45 minutes from the town we both live in. I wasn't invited to the wedding, I was just the ride. Jay doesn't like driving at night, and the road to this place is one of those winding, rural highways where the speed limit doesn't make sense and there's zero shoulder. So I offered to drop him off and come back to get him when it was over. So I went back there at 11:50 to pick him up. The road was pitch black, but the lodge entrance was lit up with one of those swinging iron signs, and I could see the edge of a huge gravel lot. But when I pulled in, I noticed something weird immediately. There were no cars. The entire parking lot was empty. At first, I thought maybe I'd gotten the wrong time. Maybe it was over already and the guests had left. But when I texted Jay, he replied almost instantly. Just finishing up, come in through the side doors. So I did. I parked and walked across the lot toward the lodge. Now, this is a big place, like a fancy multi-room banquet hall, with a main cabin-style reception area, wood beams, wraparound porch, and the whole mountain resort look. And I swear to you, it was completely dark inside. The lights along the porch were on, but through the windows I couldn't see anything. The side doors opened when I pushed them, so I walked inside. It was eerie to say the least. There were decorations up, white tablecloths, centerpieces, little name cards scattered across long banquet tables. One of those photo booth setups that had been shoved into a corner, half disassembled. There were still champagne flutes on the bar, but there were no people, no music, no noise, not even from the kitchen. I called out for Jay and didn't get an answer, so I started walking through the rooms, texting him the whole time. "Where are you?" "In the main hall," his text replied. "I'm in the main hall. No one's here." And then I didn't get a reply after that. I checked my signal, full bars. I tried calling and it rang 3 times and went to voicemail. It was like the place had been abandoned mid-reception, which made 0 sense. I stood there for another minute, starting to get that uneasy, too quiet feeling you get when you walk into a room and realize something is deeply out of place. Then Jay finally texted me, "Coming to you, stay by the bar." A moment later, I saw him walk around the corner carrying his camera bag and light kit, but he looked pale. I said, "Where the hell is everyone?" He blinked and said, "They're still in the other room dancing. I was just in there." "No, they're not," I said. "I walked through every room in this place and it's empty." That's when I saw something change in his face. He looked past me toward the main doors as if he was expecting someone to appear behind me. But no one did. We walked the lodge again, both of us together this time. The place was exactly how I found it. Empty, dark. Even the front doors were locked from the inside like the place had been shut down hours ago. But Jay swore up and down that people were dancing 5 minutes earlier. That he'd said goodbye to the bride and packed his gear while the DJ kept playing music. We checked the time, 12:07 a.m. We stood outside on the porch for a few minutes trying to figure it out. He kept asking me if I was messing with him somehow. I asked if maybe there had been 2 weddings that day and he wandered into the wrong one. The side doors were open. The decorations matched what the client had described. Everything fit except the people. On the way home, we were quiet for a while, then Jay said, "The DJ, I remember him waving. I remember hearing the song that was playing. It was Electric Feel by MGMT. There were people on the floor, and I swear to you it was full of people." The next day, Jay messaged the bride to thank her and to send her a few previews. She responded like nothing weird had happened. She even mentioned how rowdy the party got and how the valet service had to call for backup because of the number of guests who'd driven themselves instead of taking the shuttle. Confused, Jay asked when the party ended. She said they shut it down at 2 a.m. and the place was packed until then. There were supposedly over 100 guests. The dance floor was full and the valet was overwhelmed. The shuttle vans had to do multiple loops from the overflow lot. There were even a couple of noise complaints from nearby cabins. But from 11:50 to 12:20, while I stood inside that lodge, there was nothing. And Jay only saw people in the moments before I arrived, people who seemed to vanish the moment he walked away. The craziest part was when we looked at the photos later. Every shot before 11:40 was fine, normal wedding stuff, people laughing, the couple smiling, full dance floor. But anything after 11:45 looked slightly flat, like the light had changed. A few shots were blurry in ways Jay couldn't explain, like the motion blur didn't match the shutter speed. And in one photo, the bride was mid-step on the dance floor, but her shadow didn't match her body. Jay doesn't know what we experienced, a fold in time, a glitch. Maybe we stepped sideways into some parallel moment that wasn't meant to hold us for long. All I know is, for 30 minutes that night, the party vanished, and we were the only 2 people in a place that should have been overflowing with noise. You have been watching Neon Noir, a Radion production brought to you by Spoopy Cola.